The Single Electricity Market, or SEM, has transformed the electricity industry across the island of Ireland since it was introduced in 2007. The question for today is the extent to which Brexit will affect it. The SEM is a wholesale market that coordinates all generation resources on the island of Ireland to minimise the cost of production. It uses a single currency, the euro, a single legal system, Northern Ireland law, and establishes a single electricity price in each half hour that applies in both jurisdictions. This price is derived by optimising cost-based offers from generators according to a transparent algorithmic process that can be modelled by anyone who is interested. The SEM is designed to ensure security of supply for customers as it calculates separate revenue streams for the capital and operational costs of generators, thereby creating an environment that has been supportive of investment in new generation capacity. In addition to improved security of supply and wholesale prices tied to fuel costs, customers have benefited from increased competition because the market design allows suppliers to understand market price drivers, which helps them to manage their commercial risks. Controlling market power of larger firms is an explicit regulatory objective that has also helped to build confidence in the market. The SEM works because both member states share the same EU treaty obligations to operate competitive electricity markets that ensure equal access to the grid for all users, according to the same environmental standards. Beneath this overarching framework, the two governments put in place a memorandum of understanding to cover all the other issues required to make a single market work, including a joint committee of the Northern Irish and Irish regulators to own the market arrangements. But what effect will Brexit have on the SEM market? Firstly, both the Irish and UK governments wish the market arrangements to continue. The UK government's position paper, published in August 2017, talks about the strategic importance of the SEM and the need to ensure that future legal and operational frameworks don't undermine effective operation of the market. The paper is, however, somewhat short in the detail of how these aims will be delivered. Evidence given to various UK parliamentary committees by experts from a range of backgrounds suggested they had reservations about Brexit's impact on the SEM. Concerns included the effect of diverging electricity regulation north and south, the impact of any border and the ability of market participants to conduct their businesses, and the cost implications for Northern Ireland customers if the single electricity market arrangements cannot continue. The European electricity market is mandated in EU law, with rules owned by the European Commission, overseen by the Agency for the Cooperation of European Regulators, and under the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. There is no doubt about the governance arrangements for the market. Ireland is and will remain a member state of the EU, and following Brexit, the UK will be a third country. If the integrity of the EU market is to be maintained, any arrangements for a single electricity market involving the Irish member state must guarantee the implementation of EU law and market rules, now and in the future. The jurisdiction of European institutions is also non-negotiable, and this will be a challenge if the UK government adopts a stance that asserts the ultimate sovereignty of the Westminster Parliament, rejects any oversight by a so-called foreign court, and intends to leave the single market and customs union. So what might a post-Brexit SEM look like? Well, this is entirely dependent on the UK and the form of Brexit it eventually chooses. Ireland is effectively a bystander in the process. But are there any options that might allow the SEM to carry on much as before? One idea might be to agree a strengthened MOU, maybe legally binding, replacing the EU treaty obligations applicable to Northern Ireland. In this scenario, the UK would enforce EU electricity law in Northern Ireland, and a strengthened Northern Ireland devolution settlement would ensure that the Assembly had appropriate powers to do this. However, this approach would almost certainly be unacceptable to the EU, as the degree of strengthening required to make the MOU fit for purpose would make it look a lot like a bilateral trade deal, which is, of course, not permitted under EU law. It would also fail the UK sovereignty test. Given the comparatively short time until Brexit, there may be insufficient time to negotiate another form of bespoke arrangement with the EU, so continuation of the SEM will probably depend on finding an existing trade template to use, the most obvious being probably the Norway model. Norway is a participant in the EU electricity market without being a member of the EU, but it is a member of the single market and the European Economic Area, so its participation in the EU single electricity market is governed by the EEA Treaty with the EU. So the Norway model is also incompatible with the UK sovereignty model. The only other existing arrangement for EU electricity market participation is the Energy Community. This is a single-purpose agreement that aims to expand the EU electricity market to non-EU states in southeastern Europe. However, this agreement requires each contracting party to implement all EU law on energy and the environment and to accept the ECJ's jurisdiction, not very different from the Norway model. Whatever template is proposed for a post-Brexit CEM, it will only be acceptable to the EU if it guarantees compliance with EU market rules and accepts the jurisdiction of the European institutions, including the ECJ. It's hard to see how the UK government's current position on sovereignty can be made compatible with these requirements. So, can the all-island single electricity market continue post-Brexit? It is possible, but it would certainly be prudent for Ireland to have a contingency plan in place for the alternative of an Ireland-only market.